Hello and welcome to the special edition of the Gold, Ghosts, and Guns podcast. This is going to be episode 37. Normally I would do these on a Tuesday, but given what's going on today in the world today, I wanted to get together with a good friend of mine who I've had the great pleasure of being on his radio show dozens and dozens of times, or at least up until recently, Mr. Garland Nixon of the show on Radio Sputnik Fault Lines. Garland and I could not think of a better person to discuss the problems of police brutality and out of control empire and a variety of other things. Garland is not only is he a radio host and an exemplary one, but he's also a former police officer, former salesman, and a great number of other things. And he comes from a similar background to me. We're both sons of middle class guys, and we both have a lot of very strong opinions about what's going to happen. So, Garland, I'm really glad that you took time to talk to talk to me today, and let's get to it.
Thanks a lot, Tom. I appreciate you having me on.
As always, man, you're one of my favorite commentators in the world because you understand the nuance of what's happening. So let's get right to it. America's on fire. We all know what's happening. There's riots all over the place. It's insane, and there are legitimate protests, and there are legitimate and there's rioting. There's illegitimate rioting going on. And I've been writing all week about people cheering the violence on, and it's the one thing that I'll never cotton, because as a libertarian, as you well know, I don't believe in the use of violence unless it's a last resort, because the violence is the way of the state. And being a true anarchist, not one of these fake Antifa bastards, and I'm going to curse today, and you're free to do so. I will use the explicit, and I will put the explicit tag on it today because I just don't care. That don't understand what true anarchy is, and the violence is the state's way, and that's all the state understands. And the issues that surround everything that's happening in the United States today and around the world, what the Yellow Vests were protesting in France for over a year, and in other places, in Hong Kong and other places, it's about state violence. And we all know that. But the question is, do you use violence with violence? Do you meet violence with violence or not? And are you at that existential crisis moment where that's the only thing you feel you have to do? And I feel that there's a conversation that we're not having here, that we've gone straight to, oh my God, we've gone straight to Act 3 and we forgot to talk about Act 2. And so,
yeah. Well, and I know people who are good people and mean well, and they're like, oh yeah, we finally got people in the street. Hooray. We got to fight the system, and this is an unfair system. And it is an unfair system, and it needs to be opposed. However, those people have not paid attention to history. It's kind of like, it reminds me of the Iraq War, and they're like, oh, we'll go in there and we'll greet them as liberators. You can start a war, but you can't determine how it's going to finish. So when those who are cheering on violence right now are not students of history, because particularly in the circumstances we're in a time when there is an ambient rage. I mean, we could talk about the lockdown. I'm a firm believer that that's part of it. That I'm a firm believer that part of what happened here was 8 weeks or so ago, or however long it was ago, our government told people, you have to stay in the house. You can't go outside. You can't earn a living. You can't feed your families. And it started with a lot of libertarian people and a lot of conservative people coming outside, and, they had their guns or whatever, but they were angry, saying, hey, look, man, I ain't going to starve to death. You're not doing anything for me. Now I'll say this. Our proposed resolutions may be different. I say to myself, well, we should have did what the other country's going to do. If you're going to tell people to stay in, you got to mitigate that, like a country that maybe gave people 80% of their salary. But that's beside the point. They didn't. The government said, you got to stay in and you can't feed your family. And people didn't have the money and time. And it started off with conservatives or libertarians coming out saying, you got to reopen. I do feel that now there's a lot of dynamics here, but part of the dynamic here is you had a bunch of people who are in the house. They ain't had a check in 8 weeks. 40% of the people making $40,000 or less in this country lost their jobs in March. So you got a bunch of people that are in the house. I think the Floyd issue, it is a real issue, but I think it was a spark, and it sparked a rage, and it's a dangerous rage. And for those who think this is just about justice or this is just about George Floyd, don't realize that there was a very dangerous rage here. And a lot of it was from people who looked at our government and like, will you lock me in a house? What am I supposed to do? Starve? And now, might I add, they're looking at, I was looking the other day, they're estimating 365,000 evictions in Los Angeles County alone by the end of the summer. Well, okay, technically it would be hard to do, but if you're one of those people saying, "Oh no, I'm going to get evicted," there's a collective rage out here. And when I
Sure.
see what's going on in the streets, both from the police and from the other people, I see people with their teeth clenched up and raging and angry, and I'm like, this is a dangerous time. This is
Hmm.
not something to be cheering on. I don't know how this ends. I don't know if this ends. And now the president's like, we'll just send in the troops. I'm like, oh, great. Why don't we throw gas on the fire? I don't, and now don't get me wrong. I don't know what can be done, if anything can be done, but I'm with you. No matter how you view this, it's a very dangerous time, and it is a great error to think that this is only some kind of a political movement that's moving for the better of. It's out of control. It can't be controlled, and God only knows how it can end.
I, Garland, I couldn't agree with you more. And again, there's so many angles to this, and when I start looking at it from that perspective, when I start looking, okay, well, okay, how many angles do we look at this thing at? I tend to then want to just take the big step back and start talking about what the psychology is, which you just touched on, which is that there's this rage, and the rage is a beautiful word for this, and it's a word honestly that I've been searching for honestly for about 4 days while I write about this stuff. I'm looking for a word, and all I can come up with is anger, but rage is a better word. And when we look at state violence and we understand that it is an unfair system in every way, and we could talk about the specifics of it. The specifics don't matter. How much money did they use to bail out Wall Street as opposed to Main Street, and blah 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 blah. None of that really matters when you're talking about the fact that yeah, you just upended our lives completely, and we don't have any recourse now. You and I both still have our jobs, or at least have our income, haven't really been affected by this, and it's very difficult for us to do anything other than have, in effect, fake sympathy for this actual situation, right? I mean, I'm calling for temperance, you're calling for temperance, and at the same time everybody's going, what do you expect? So now the bigger question is, um, if the state is going to react to this, which the state has to do in some way, and you're right, Trump threatening bringing in the troops is a very provocative measure. Now, here's the question, and it's one I understand. And again, this is I'm not advocating any of this stuff, but there at a certain point, both the police and the rioters have to realize that at some point, something some form of order, even if it's metastable, to get everybody's emotions down a bit. When the police get too tired, and I mentioned to you before we started recording that I saw a tweet from Scott Ritter, which made me enraged because he said, we've got operational tempo on them. The police are getting tired. We can go for more now. We can do what needs to be done, or effectively calling for even more violence to keep the pressure on. And he was calling for more violence. He was not talking about peaceful protesters. I'm like, that's veering into armed insurrection. Now, when that is the case, posse comitatus or posse comitatus goes by the wayside, because the governors can ask legally, the governors can ask the president to step in and support the police under the control of the governors, under control of the local government, to supplant the police effectively. Now, in order to get these guys a break, in the same way that we were asking for temperance and to stay home so that medical workers wouldn't be overwhelmed during COVID-19, right? That was the justification
Hmm.
for the lockdown. We now have, and this is the only way I would even in any way, manner, shape, or form, um, advocate or agree with, or at least grit my teeth and say okay to this kind of use of the military. Because to be honest with you, the police and the military aren't much different in terms of tactics anymore. And that's been the militarization of the police has been going on for 25 years. I mean, if not longer, right? Going back to the Clinton crime bill, and the image of my dad working the riots in New York City in 1970s, right? During he was on the streets in Bedford-Stuyvesant the night Dr. King got shot. Like, okay, seriously, like, and all he had was a polyester shirt and a polyester pair of pants, his rosewood nightstick, and a badge, right? And the fact that he was trained in 220 pounds and a big man. And I can tell you flat out that he told me flat out, we didn't attack anybody. All we could do was protect the people who weren't rioting. That guy today doesn't exist. Today,
Right.
you look at the military, you look at the police today, and they look like we thought John Carpenter's escape from New York, the cops in 1982. We thought they looked like we thought that was crazy. Today, they look 10 times more menacing than that. They have so much more available to them. Like, what do we need this for? And this is where people's rage is coming from, and why I can understand why we have to do it, why this gets to the point where it is today. And the racial inequality and the income inequality, and all of it is just off the charts, thanks to the Fed, thanks to the government, thanks to all these things. And then, again, be careful what you wish for. Be careful what you ask for. You just might get it.
Well, what do you think of this, Tom? This is something
Sure.
I've been thinking about because you can look at this through various lenses. One of the lenses that I don't hear people looking through this through is a generational lens. So here's what I mean, and I'm wondering what your comment is on this. When I turn on the TV, and if I really look at it and I see what is the demographic, it's not a demographic of black or white or Latino ethnicities. It's an age demographic. When I look at this, I see a bunch of people 30 and under, 35 and under. It's young people of all, of all races, of all everything, but they're young. Right. And they're angry and they're furious. And I think to myself, geez, these are the people who have looked at the two parties and have abandoned the parties. If you look at it, the young people don't vote much, right? They've looked at these parties, they've abandoned the parties. They look at their future, they're caught up in a few student loans. Yep. They look at their present. A lot of them work as bartenders, things like that. They got no job right now, don't know when they'll have it. So they didn't have a future. Now they don't even have a present.
Yep.
And I look at this generation, and let me add this. And so people are like, well, what about COVID-19? They'll go out here and there'll be a second wave. And I think, well, from their perspective, if they believe everything that's being said about COVID-19, here's what they're going to say. It ain't affecting us anyway.
That's right.
We're not getting sick by it. Why'd you even lock us down in the first place? We don't need to be locked down. You told us to you locked us down to protect you. You locked us down, older people. So you said, don't bring it home to us. And we don't give a crap about you because our lives are ruined. Economically, their lives are ruined. Their future was already shot to hell. Now their present is gone. I think that people are missing the boat when they see this only about race. I think that was, and I'm a black person. I'm a former cop, but I see this as this was a tinderbox with a spark. If you've been listening to my show for the last 8 weeks, I've said there will be social unrest this summer. There will be social unrest this summer. I didn't know it, what would cause it. But when I see this madness, and let me add this, here's what they see. They see the Fed open up $4 or $5 trillion for the richest people in the world, and they're going to get evicted. Trillions to the richest people, so-called loans to the small businesses that all go to like Ruth's Chris. They see this unfairness and they got nothing but lint in their pockets. These people are pissed, and I think people are missing the boat. Not that the issue of racial inequality is not important or that it's not even there. Right. But if you look at it through a generational perspective, and they're like, you guys, it's like looking at your dad. He buys a Rolls Royce. He buys, a giant estate, a boat, and you say, Dad, I'm hungry. Can I have enough money for food? No, you get nothing. Right. You're going to be pissed at Dad. You're going to have daddy issues. I think that's part of it. But I want to get your comment. What do you think about that?
I've been screaming that the boomers are so scared to death of their mortality because they've never actually dealt with it in any way, in any substantive way. That's part of the reason why they were so easily manipulated and freaking out into over COVID-19, because it mostly affects them. I think, look, dude, don't get me started about boomers. I'm fully off the boomer bandwagon. Like I've been like screaming about this. I called this Boomerville a long time ago, and that what's left of America
I'm going
is
to
this.
use that one. I'm glad
Yeah,
you said. I'm going to
I've
steal
been,
that one from you, Tom. I won't
I'm
reference
in.
you for it, but I'm going to
No,
steal
it's that's
Boomerville.
fine. You go right ahead. I wrote an article called an article "The Russiagate becomes Obamagate and then the end of Boomerville" about 3 weeks ago. And Boomerville is that vision of America that existed, that vision of America, the one that never existed, the vision of America, the shining house on the hill that was going to export democracy around the world and all this stuff that the boomers believed, and they were going to usher in their utopia, and they're all been, and at the same time they were being inculcated by freaking commies. I'm not like mincing words anymore. They were inculcated in all of this third wave feminism and all this other stuff that they've grown up without they've got grown old without a real religion, without any religion, and the religion that they were taught has no sense of forgiveness, and in some ways they pass it on to their kids. These people aren't Christians. The great hack of Christianity, and I'm a former Christian, right? I grew up Catholic, but the great hack of Christianity, which I still believe in, but I'm just not the religion itself, is that everybody has a spark of the divine, and that everybody is, and hate the sin, not the sinner. Everybody has a chance for redemption and forgiveness, right? Dude, I'm a Star Wars fan. It's my religion. So, right. And no, I'm dead serious. Like I can do this. I could do this whole podcast the next hour without you. So you just opened up like a big can of worms here. Yeah, I get it. And the kids behind us were also inculcated all of this, and and that long march through the institutions that has slowly ground out any kind of culture and civilization, to telling them that the culture, then the civilization you live in, is fundamentally unfair and it's fundamentally unforgivable. Look at what's happening when you can see instances all around it of the all around the riots and the protests, and you can see this happening, and you can see the self-abnegation of people who have nothing else. They got rid of normal religion, they gave it to the state, and then the state betrayed them at every level, and now they don't know what to do. Okay, well, now we're just going to turn it all down. And you're absolutely right that the kids, their future was taken away from them in 2008. They have no chance of home ownership. 25 to 54, 25 to 35 unemployment in Europe and the United States has been off the charts high for years, right? None of this is ever, they have no chance for a normal family or life. They're not, and any of that. And of course, well, when you have nothing, when people lose everything, they lose it, right? As Gerald Celente has said for years. So no, I get it, man. It's a massive generational divide. And I've been saying that it's the generational divide that was going to create the ugly dynamic that breaks the United States down. And the boomers' refusal to give up power and to give up their vision of utopia, because they've all passed their born-on date. All these people should have been out of power years ago. So Pelosi and Schumer and all the rest of them. And they should have turned all this stuff over to Gen X 20 years ago or 10 years ago. And they didn't do it. They wouldn't do it because they freaking hate us. They hate their kids. The boomers hate their Gen X kids, and they want their millennial grandchildren to pay for their to continue to pay for their retirement because they never saved. And how many of these people are 70 years old? They have $63,000 in their 401k, and they're going to retire on it. Like, are you kidding me? Like, seriously? Like, this is the situation that we're in, and I'm making gross generalizations here, but there's a very deep nugget of truth that weaves through all of this. So yeah, man, I get it. I fully get it. And I feel bad for the kids, but the violence is not the way out of it. Listening to your freaking hard-bitten Gen X parents who are going, dude, you do not want this. Let's figure it out. Let's get rid of those people and let's move on, because we're all being had. That's what I think.
Yeah, and the other thing about it is this, and it's sad, but I've been looking, and you also, I've been looking at our foreign policy, and it's been for years now, and it's surreal. And particularly now because the Scoop Jackson people, the George W. Bush people who've been in power through Bush, been in power through Obama, and they're like really on steroids now. We got total lunatics like Pompeo and the whole group. These people are lunatics. And when I look at our foreign policy, and I know how the rest of the world looks at us, that we're running around just like cavemen we're going to bash everybody's heads in and take what we want. When we've got Trump in Syria saying, oh, we're just going to take the oil. We'll
I
just
know.
keep the oil. We're landing troops in people's countries, like out of the blue, and just saying, we decided we're going to stay in this part of your country. When I see how the rest of the world sees us like lunatics, sadly, to some extent, I look at the madness that's going on in our country, this Mad Max looking, wasteland that we are right now living in.
Mm-hmm.
And I say to myself, it looks like our foreign policy. Our
Yep.
domestic landscape looks like what we create. When Libya, we've created Libya. You know what? I don't want to live
No.
in Libya. I don't want to live
No.
in Somalia. I want to
No.
live somewhere where we've got a stable government, where I can have. And these people who are pushing for this to get bigger don't realize that when everything falls apart, you're living in Somalia or Libya. Sadly, we created Libya.
I know.
And so now, what we have created externally, we've now created internally. And
Yep.
it has to do with our military policy, our fiscal policy. And what do we do externally? We're going to punch harder. If we yell, if we punch, and you don't do what we want, we're going to pay a punch harder. It's horrifying to me to see what we have created in some of these other countries, and it's like now we've created that at home. And when I and you can look at it. There are a lot of people that look at it from various perspectives of what's going on now when they turn on the TV, right?
Mm-hmm.
And they see two sides. These are the protesters, and they're angry and they're smashing things, or some of them are peaceful, some of them are angry, some of them are, there's all kinds of protesters, right? And then
Mm-hmm.
I see the cops, and some of them are doing their diligent duty. And then, and I'll look and I'll see some angry cop. I mean, you've seen it online.
Right.
Just walk up
Sure.
and bash somebody in the head. And I'm
Yep.
like, holy crap, what was that? I was a cop. When did that start, right?
Yeah.
But if I don't look at them as the cops are on this side and the protesters are on this side, I look at it and say, that's America that I'm looking at.
Yeah.
I'm looking at a bunch of people with their teeth gritted up, punching other Americans, swinging at other Americans. Well, some of them got on uniforms. Some of them got on jeans and sneakers. Some of them got on all black. Some of
Yep.
them got, but in America right now, it is just a rageaholic where it's almost like one of these. There's been these movies. I think one of them was called The Crazies or something, where
Mm-hmm.
like some military chemical gets loose in a town, and everybody in the town just goes crazy and just attacks the nearest person they can and just tries to kill them. There's been several movies like that.
Right.
This
Mm-hmm.
is what I'm looking at. It's
Yeah.
the crazies. Everybody, uniform, no uniform, they're running in all different directions. They're throwing things. They're screaming. People who, in some instances, I guarantee you that there are good people that would not hurt a flea, that wouldn't really, under normal circumstances, be involved in violence. And the madness has become infectious, like some kind of a movie where some military
Some
chemical
fires.
gets loose and infects everybody. And I don't, because I was a cop, I guess. When I see cops, I see, because I know I was a regular guy. I took off my
Right.
uniform and came home, and I was a regular person. I wasn't 24 hours walking around as a cop. I was a human
Of
being.
course.
And I
You did
realized
your
they're
eight. You went
human
home.
beings too. And they're dealing with other things too. And I just say there's two people raging at each other. One of them has a uniform, one of them doesn't. They're
Yep.
screaming, they're yelling, they're throwing bottles, they're throwing punches. And as you said, the people that don't understand the danger of this dynamic, they think that the United States is somehow different than the rest of the world has been for history, that other empires have fallen like this, and that we couldn't possibly fall. And the problem is they, in their little minds, think, well, after this all cleans up, we'll just go back to normal.
Oh
And you and I
no.
know, oh no, that ain't the case.
No.
If this does not subside, then there ain't going to be, you ain't going to like the new normal.
No.
Fiscally and financially, you ain't going to like the new normal. From a perspective of safety wise, where you can get beaten, killed, raped, murdered, whatever, because there's no order, you ain't going to like the new normal. At any
No.
rate, I've talked a lot, but what do you think, Tom?
No, I agree with you. You're fine. You preach it, brother. That's all. That's I'm with you on this. No, I agree. I agree on that. And let's take it one step further. Remember, we're dealing with people who've lost the ability to understand how to forgive. Look at what, and it's that rage is real. And I've been saying for a while now. I said, look, at the end of the day, you're going to have people on all spectrum of behavior, right? There's going to be it's like everything else. You got a normal distribution of behavior, and at this point, there's a lot of people out there protesting peacefully, like normal. Like, they're angry about what's happening. They're angry about what happened with George Floyd. They're using that as their catalyst to go out and protest against what the government has become and what the police have become. They don't like it. They don't want to distrust their police. They don't want to hate their police. And then move a sigma away from that in either direction. The police are the same way. There's a lot. I mean, I retweeted out the other day the Lake City sheriff handing his bullhorn to a guy dressed as Spider-Man to help the protest, to help to amplify his voice to the protesters. Say we're peaceful, and this is in like rural Florida, right? I mean, Lake City is as rural white redneck as you can get. Well, not completely white. We have plenty of rural blacks here in North Florida, and they're all great people. Everyone I've ever met is a great person. They're all great people, right? And we have that. There's a spectrum of behavior. You're going to have everybody, and what the media amplifies, because that's what the media is trying to do, is to amplify the Three Sigma behavior, or aberrant Three Sigma behavior. I've always said for years that all they care about is the freak show. 95% of us all agree about everything. They want to take the 5%. They want to take the 5%, turn that freak show, make that normal, and then use that to enrage as many in the next cohort, the next 15%, to use that and as far as I'm concerned, this is an armed insurrection against the United States. It's an armed insurrection against every, and when I look at this, when I take the big 40,000 foot level look here, it's very obvious to me that there are a lot of people with a lot of power who are fundamentally threatened by a no-deal Brexit in the UK and Donald Trump winning a second term in office here in the United States. Even Trump, for all of his flaws, has the right instincts, which is don't start any new wars, try and get the troops to come home. Yeah, he's got a lot of crazy ideas about stealing oil and stuff. I got news for you. That's so minor compared to the actual things that he could do if he could get all these horrible people off of his back. We got Rod Rosenstein out there trying to absolve Russiagate by throwing just Andrew McCabe under the bus and nobody else. Lindsey Graham giving him cover today at the hearings, from what I understand. I mean, it's so very obvious that there's a power structure that is inciting both sides to be raging at each other and not turn their attention on them who actually architected all of this. That's the freaking thing that is, if you want to know what enrages me, Garland, that's what enrages me. It's so very obvious that we're all being played. And I'm seeing this from people who should know better. I'm honestly seeing it from people, I'm going to call them out. I'm seeing it from people like Mike Krieger, who's sitting there today just constantly oh yeah, you want to talk about looting? Let's talk about the Federal Reserve. Like, dude, that's so tone deaf to what's actually happening. Are you kidding me at this point in time? Like, I don't know about you, but I donated to the woman I saw who's a black woman whose shop got destroyed in Philadelphia. I think it was in Philadelphia. I don't know. And she very eloquently says, "Look what you did to my shop." I'm like, I sent her $10. I felt bad that I didn't send her 20.
Right.
Because I mean, like, this is not about you realize, I don't know how to get through to people that this is a bigger fight than George Floyd or black and white, red, blue, any of this. None of those things matter. Those are all false dyads. The real fight is us versus them. It's we, the normal people who have been who are being farmed like livestock for their new feudalism. And if you don't see it,
the way I put it, Tom, is they burn us like fuel.
Yep.
They burn us like the average working person, the average person who's trying to have a decent life. They burn us up like fuel. We are fuel for their machines. I tell you one thing that I'm with you on, and this is another thing that's very, very dangerous. One thing I learned about from the Trump administration, and I'm no Trump fan by any stretch of the imagination, but here's what I learned. There was, and I've said this many a time, there was a massive criminal enterprise that had to do with a and I'm in a way I'm glad that the Trump whole Russiagate thing happened, because I was able, and hopefully other people was able to learn about this. The concept of globalism is generally thought of as, economics, right? Now what I'm really learning is there is a global, international, what we call the national security state. It's an international security state.
Absolutely.
With the whole Russiagate thing, they were in Rome. They were using Australia. They were using England. They were using the Mossad. They were using everyone. So one of the things that they cannot allow They cannot allow to get out what really happened with Russiagate. They can't, because if people found out that there's only one international security state intelligence operator, the CIA, the FBI, there ain't no division line. They all worked together, and
Mm-hmm.
the MI6, they all work together. In fact,
Five
the
Eyes.
U.S. is funding MI6 to a point where we own them.
Mm-hmm.
We're funding their version of the NSA. The U.S. is funding it, so we basically own them. So what we have now is one giant international security state, and that international security state said, you know what? That Trump guy ain't one of us. Let's
Yep.
do everything we can to stop him. But for whatever reason, it was unable to stop them. And that thing right now, that horrifying beast that was able to hide in the shadows, one of the things that Russiagate has done, and a lot of people snoop, including people like you and I, snooping their nose into it, has woke people up, so a certain amount of people, and said, wait a minute. Look at this thing under here.
Mm-hmm.
We turned up a rock and we didn't see a couple of little ants. We saw a dragon. We saw a gigantic monster. And that's one of the things, do not, overlook the fact that this monster, its power is in its anonymity.
Yes.
Now that it sees that it may be revealed, it's like a vampire. If it comes out during the day, it's going up in smoke. And this thing is like, you know what? We don't give a crap if your society burns.
That's right.
That's fine, because we're going to be fine. So we got these billionaires, Bezoses, and all of these people who are like, who cares? We got our private islands. We got the Comeys and all of the people of the world. Let's not forget, Comey was what? He was on the board of directors of HSBC. He was
Mm-hmm.
vice president of Lockheed Martin. This
There you
is
go.
one giant dragon. I think the exposure of Russiagate, the Assange, they had to take him
Yep.
him out because the dragon is threatened to be exposed. And I think here's what I'll say, and I'll throw it to you. Don't underestimate what a wounded and frightened dragon will do when it thinks that it may be exposed.
No, you're absolutely right. I remember reading Martin Armstrong back in 2010. Okay. 2010, 2008, 2010, when he was still in prison. Actually, so it would be 2008. And he was talking about the period between 2016 and 2020. His computer then was saying that his models for the future, he was saying that between 2016 and 2020 would be the opening up of the window where where everything would start to fall apart again. And the period from 2018 to 2022 was where, when we started to get into that phase, right? When the people started to stand up and say no to all this, that's when the system would have to defend itself, and the system is going to start failing, and it's not going to go gently into that good night. And he said that back in 2008, and I remember listening to that going, God, it's going to take that long? Because I wanted it over in 2008. I'll be honest with you, Garland. I was already tired of this. I was
That
back
would have
then.
been
I
the
was
safest thing,
uh,
though. You
right.
know what
I
I
was.
mean? That was
What's
the
that?
safest thing in 2008. If it had ended in 2008, it could have ended peacefully,
I
because
know.
the
I
system
know.
washed ashore, and a new system could have
Yep.
come out, and it wouldn't have ended up being like this, I
It
think.
has metastasized into something very, very ugly. And when you add another half generation of bad code coming out of the institutions, being fed into these kids' head about inequality and everything. It's so easy to make. I mean, dude, seriously, I remember talking to a good friend of mine about this, like, I don't know, a year and a half ago. And we're both, I'm a libertarian. He's mostly a libertarian. He's more conservative than I am. And we were both sitting there going, dude, he said to me, dude, if you grew up in Mexico with how failed the state is there, and how just horrible the institutional order is there, you'd be a lefty too. There's no way you could not be, simply because the system is so fundamentally unfair. That's how bad it is. You would look at the situation from that perspective, and you'd be wearing a Che Guevara shirt, Tom. You just would. I'm like, yeah, you're probably right. And I get it. So I get what I'm seeing from these Antifa kids. I get what I see. I get it. I do. And I'm like, you have to resist it. And I don't see how it's going to, because there's generational imprinting here. There's fundamental psychological and generational imprinting. I was watching some old interviews with Yuri Bezimov, the former KGB intelligence officer, who was an architect of many of these programs. And he explained exactly how this was playing this out when he defected in 1983 to try and stop this stuff, and to try and explain to us what he'd done to us. And he's like, got news for you. I can destroy people's perspective so thoroughly that you can present them the truth and they will not believe it. You can present them the truth that 2 plus 2 does in fact equal 4, and they will question it. That's how thorough and complete effectively the brainwashing is. And in terms of how the imprinting works. And I'm dead serious when I look around me today. I'm not paranoid when I say this. It's everywhere. I think Comintern, which was real, ended in the 1980s. But we're downstream of that being and that system having just been run on autopilot for years. And the people at the top are just using it. They're all useful idiots. Like, these kids don't realize that if they get their quote unquote communist revolution, they're going to take everything. They're going to take the government back. Do they not realize that they're going to be the first ones put up against the wall and shot? Because that's what's happened every time this has occurred in history. The people who were the foot soldiers for this and who carried the intellectual water in the media and in the institutions, they're all going to be the first ones shot. Not the ones who cried out and told you it was happening. They'll keep me alive because I'm a crank. They're going to get rid of all the people who know too much, who understand too much. And because when they realize that they've been had, they're going to be the biggest opponents of this. And that's what they're most worried about. And that's what's coming, Garland. That's what I see. And that's what I'm so very worried about today. And that's why I don't want to see this get out of control. As flawed and as terrible as Trump is, as flawed and as horrible as our system is, at this point, you don't want it to fail in a disorderly fashion. You don't want to invite the chaos, because chaos creates the killing fields. It creates Vietnam. It creates the Cultural Revolution. It creates Stalin. It creates Hitler. This is where we are. And I'm like, it's not coming to Florida. I'm telling you right now, I will stand in my house and I will not let that happen.
Well, the other thing too, and that is these people who are like, yay, move forward, right? And they think, yay, move forward. And then, well, what are you going to do this weekend? Oh, I'm going to go to an outside restaurant and have a beer. No. You don't understand.
Right.
You have an expectation that, like watching a movie, you can watch a movie and there'll be mayhem in the streets. And then after the movie, you go down and get something to eat, get yourself a nice snack, an eclair maybe, right? They don't understand that when you get this level of dysfunction, the food, transportation system starts to fall apart, and the value of money starts to crap out, and now you need $1,000 to buy a bottle of water if you could find a bottle of water. You know what I mean? Because because the restaurants are either burned out, the stores are broken out, people don't have money, there's mayhem in the streets. They don't understand that you have an expectation of a certain amount of leisure in society.
That's right.
But that is created to some extent by having some order, having an extreme amount of order in a society. So what you want is you want both. You want to use disorder to overturn the old system, but you still want the comfort of the old order. Mm-hmm. You ain't getting both of them.
No.
At this point, we're somewhere right. At this point, we got neither one of them. Not that I want either one of them either.
Right.
So as you said, there's people that don't realize what we're up against. And the sad thing is, it's like this too, because I look at these things and I'm like, oh my God, this is going bad. But the other side of me says this. You know what? If you jump off a cliff and you're in the air, and about halfway down, you're like, I made a mistake. Perhaps I should have done it a different way. You're gonna hit the ground. There ain't no way back up. We made that decision. And when we decided to invade every stinking country in the world, to print just unlimited money, just print it whenever, to do the things that we've done, to act the way that we act, to have a government full of millionaires that don't care anything about any responsibility, it's simple. I want to get reelected. I got these rich donors. I'm going to do what this rich elite class of perverts want me to do.
That's right.
And our government is totally separate, completely unrelated to the people. You still have people that think the government represents them. What a joke. An absolute joke. So my point is, unfortunately, we put all of the vegetables and all of the seasonings in a stew, and we got the stew that we cooked.
That's right.
And sadly, there was no way for this not to happen. You know what I mean?
I know.
And that's what scares me, because I'm like, People are like, yay. I'm like, no, I'm hoping this thing burns out. Maybe another day, maybe a couple of days, maybe a
Yeah.
couple of weeks. I've got my fingers crossed. Hopefully it burns out. I'm getting anxious because the more days it goes on, the more it appears, man, this country's kind of going to fall. And see, Donald Trump doesn't realize something also. Let's think about East Germany. One of the dangerous things you can do is say to the government, say to your troops, I want you to go and straighten things out in this society. And our troops are almost all millennials. What happens if you send your troops in and they look back at you and say, "How you doing it? These are millennials and I'm a millennial. These are people. These are my." No, I'm not going to do it. If you pull that trigger, bad metaphor, but you get the picture.
Yeah. Yeah.
If you say, "Okay, troops, do it," what happens if the troops say no? That's the East Germans. That's when your government completely falls and you have total disorder. So if Trump, that's the other part of it. There's a discussion about using the military, but that is, you're now gambling with it all.
Yep.
You're gambling with everything. That should be a last resort, because if they say no, what happens if you send squadrons into a city and some of the squadrons say, I ain't doing it. No, right. I'm not. I refuse. Or shoot. Or let's say one squadron sees another squadron shoot at some protesters, and that squadron says, "Hey, I'm pissed," and shoots back at that squadron. And now you have them shooting at each other. Yep. If you send in the military, you are gambling with everything, because if they say no, or now you have some kind of insurrection, or some people in the military decide they're not going to go along with it, the whole deck of cards falls.
I agree. And I'll tell you exactly what I've been saying. I've been advocating to people during this entire thing. Well, I'll say this: I think Trump should defend the Capitol, because that's what he should do. Because the Capitol, because that's symbolic. There's certain things that have to be dealt with. If he wants help if the states want help with the military under civilian control in the local places and under the governor and the mayor of those particular cities, unfortunately, I'm going to be okay with that, if for nothing else than to relieve the exhausted police officers, because they can't go out there every night and do this. Because as Scott Ritter, as I said earlier, Scott Ritter's like, we've got operational tempo. Let's press on them.
If I may make a quick comment, quick comment as an ex-cop.
Sure.
What people are looking and they're raging, oh, the cops are doing this. This is unfair, which is valid. Okay, but here's what I have to say. In a way, it's unfair to the cops. You're asking them. You created this mess.
Yes.
You created this disaster. And now you're going to tell the guy at the lowest possible level. You created it. And I'm going to say the way you dealt with the lockdown, whether you locked down or didn't lock down, if you locked down, you had to deal with it a different way. But they did it. So now they created this unthinkable mess. Now you're going to put guys out there and girls. There's not enough cops in any city. What do you got? 25,000 cops in New York, a city of 10 million people. Right. There ain't enough. So from one perspective, you're putting the cops out there and you're telling them to clean up a disaster that you created. Now they want to blame the cops. Yep. And I'm not saying, look, the cops, you shouldn't push people around and do bad things, and there's cops doing bad stuff. I disagree with it. But they're trying to make an example out of them, saying, here's the way we're going to fix it. That cop over there pushed somebody down. We're going to take his job. Okay, I understand that. But don't try to pretend like firing a cop over there because he did something that he shouldn't do is going to clean up the disaster that you created. And now you're asking people to clean up a mess that they're not capable of cleaning up, that's way too big for their hands. And you see a bunch of cops running around scared to death, freaked out, don't know what to do. And as you said, how many days in a row can a guy work 10 hours a day when he's getting the crap beat out of him? He's running around. It's hot. You know you're in. It's 93 today. Do you want to wear all black, carry a heavy shield, have a helmet on, have a stick, bottles and things coming at you, or even if you're just in an area where you're walking around and nothing's going on in that area? You are hot as hell and miserable for 10 hours, and you got to come back tomorrow and do it for 10 hours again tomorrow, and you don't know which day you're going to get bopped with a rock or what. These people are being put in a position to clean up a disaster that they did not make, and then the system wants to try to blame them and pretend as though they are the problem.
Yeah, it's insane. And thank you for putting it in those terms, because that's incredible. This is why I wanted you to this is why I wanted to talk to you today, Garland, because you lived this, right? I lived with it, right? and I lived with the after effects of how that affects the family dynamic and everything else. My dad was a freaking superhero, but at the same time, he was also just a man, right?
Hmm.
Um, no, my point is, I've been saying at a political analyst level that the myth of policing, which is that you make an example out of one guy to keep 1,000 in line, that myth is going to end, and the myth that the state is going to end. And what I was about to say before you interrupted me with the incredibly eloquent thing that you said, which is this: it is not, we cannot look to the government to bail us out here. The government put us in this mess. The government's put the police in the wrong position. The sheriff from Polk County, his little 1 minute and 12 seconds the other day was the best thing I heard. Don't come to Polk County. People in Polk County have guns. They like their guns. I encourage them to own their guns. I want and I encourage them to use their guns. So if you come to Polk County and you're going to loot and you're going to pillage and you're going to invade their homes, I encourage them to blow you back out of their homes with their guns. And then when you stop rioting, we'll have a conversation about what we've done right and what we've done wrong. But this is about us as a people and deciding who we're going to be. How many politicians have you heard over the last 2 weeks say, "Oh, this is not who we are. Oh no, this is exactly who we are." And now we need to own it, face up to it, face up to the consequences of what we've done. I've been saying for years, my government does horrible things in my name, with my money and my time. And all I can do is apologize. I remember the day after 9/11, turning to my coworker who was Iraqi, right? My good friend Abed, another lab manager like me. I walked out of my lab. I walked over to have coffee with Abed. We sat there and we chatted for a couple of minutes. And I just looked at him and I said, "Abed, I want to apologize right now for what my country is going to do to yours, and I have no chance to stop it, because that's what's coming. And I don't know what else to do other than apologize to you now and hope that your family is not caught in the backlash of it. But we have to realize right fucking now, this is on us to clean up. It's not on the cops. It's not on the government. It's not on Donald Trump or anybody else. We made this goddamn mess, and it's up to us to clean it up, because we're the only ones who can. And either we demand and this is how this has to happen. And if it means you defend your home with a friggin' rifle, you defend your home with a rifle until everybody calms the fuck down. And then we look at the situation and go, you out of the pool, you out of the pool. And I'm talking to Pelosi, I'm talking to Schumer, I'm talking to my county commissioners, I'm talking to Seattle county commissioners who say, I don't understand what the problem with looting is. Like, really? You don't understand? Okay. And you run the city of Seattle. Okay. That's where we are. That's what has to happen. We all have to look to ourselves and say, what are you going to do about it? Who are you going to be tomorrow? And what example are you going to be to your kids? Because those kids that are on the streets rioting, thinking that they're going to bring in the next communist revolution or whatever, who are they a reflection of? What are their parents doing? That's what I want to know. And that's the lesson I'm trying to teach my daughter right now, who's 14, and she's legitimately scared.
Yeah. And you know what?
At the same time, my job as her dad is to say, I have plans. I have a multiplicity of plans, and we're going to execute on all of them, because my first priority is to keep you safe.
Mm-hmm.
Period. And it does not matter, and nothing else matters. Anyway, we'll rebuild if we have to.
Yeah, it's a pretty horrifying time for people who have children, and your children have a future, and you wonder what in the hell kind of future do these people have. But when you look, I look at, there's certain things from this whole act, and people are like, oh, look what has happened, and I say, guys, this is act one of the play. This ain't act two. We got, but when I look at this, certain things stick out. Certain things are symbolic. I still remember looking at this and seeing Nancy Pelosi. I'll never forget that. And seeing some late night schmuck interview Nancy Pelosi. And there she is, two $12,000 refrigerators, talking about how, with her, hair done and her $600 scarf and all this stuff, talking about how her $12 a pint ice cream, that's how she's going to get through the pandemic. It was the ultimate Marie Antoinette. Yes. It was the ultimate, building the castle of Versailles while the people of the French countryside starved.
Yeah. Let
And
him
I'll
eat ice
never
cream.
forget that. And I saw a lot of millennials sending that, and people everywhere sending that around. People were furious over it, and I'll just that for some reason stuck into my mind as representative of what our government is now. And I look at it, and I don't. The sad thing is, you look at it and you say, okay, they're opening things back up. Unfortunately, people have this expectation that they'll just turn a light switch back on
Hmm.
and okay, we'll go back to normal. When they open things back up to some extent, I'd say by July, August, I see things getting worse because now you got 42 million people out of work. They've wiped out our economy and done nothing to mitigate it. At that point, those people, many of them who thought they could return to their work or they could return to work somewhere,
Hmm.
start to realize, wait a minute, not only can I not go back to my job, I'm putting in everywhere. I put in for a job and there's 10,000 people putting in for this job. There's nothing available. Oh my God, what am I going to do? These are people who want to work, who
Yep.
need to work, and there's nothing going to be available there. Are we going to have a country with literally millions of people? Literally. And a lot of times this just sounds like, oh, you're being overboard. Oh, Garland, you're
No,
going too far.
no,
This is ridiculous. No,
you're not.
we could have literally tens of millions of homeless people. We're in a situation where if they decide they're going to do evictions, first of all, the system can't even handle it. You brought that
Nope.
up. I didn't even think about it.
Right.
How are you going to go? How are these landlords going to go to court
Yep.
and say, I got everybody in all of my buildings. I got 25 buildings. I know people that own a lot of buildings. I got
Yeah.
10 buildings. I need to evict everybody in all of them. So now the court, it says, well, bad news, we're 8 years out on evictions. We're 14 years out on evictions because we got one court and we got 22,000 evictions and we got 4 people working in the eviction section.
To be honest with you, Garland, I'll take it one step further. That landlord's not going to do that. What he's going to do is he's going to realize that he doesn't have anybody who actually wants to rent those apartments now.
Good point.
And so what's going to happen is and this is the part, this is what I've been trying to explain to you and Lee on Fault Lines multiple times is that, look, the renter and the rentee and the landlord, the lender and the lendee, they have to get together and figure this stuff out. The banks are bailing out the banks and giving out stimulus money and adding to unemployment checks. I know it sounds horrific to say we're not going to help people, but the truth of the matter is that people are going to they're taking their stimulus checks and they're holding on to them, right? They're not spending it. The savings rate went through the roof the other day, right? We saw that the other day. People are hoarding cash. Rightly so. They have no idea when the next time they're going to get any money. I've been desperately poor. I can tell you what I've done to hoard cash. It's
Right.
insane, right?
Yeah.
So I know what I do when I have to. I took my. You should have seen what I did with the $27,000 I got from my mom's estate, which I got 3 weeks after I got fired from Newsmax the first time in 2017 before I started on the path I'm on now. Like I made that last like a year and a half. Like, okay. So I get it, right? Well, I'm making $500 a month writing $15 articles and all the rest of it. I've done this. I know what people are doing. But as once everybody does that and everybody looks up and goes, okay, so what are we going to do now? And I told you guys from the beginning, bail out the muni bond sector, get the governments, get the local governments, free up their finances so they can now rotate the flow of money through the economy such that all the local prices drop and the property values drop and the banks have to take haircuts and all of it. You want to depower these freaking predatory bankers and
Hmm.
oligarchs and all the rest of them? The best way to do that is to crash their asset prices. And if you don't bail anybody out, then their asset prices then they have to come to the table and the lender and the lendee have to go, okay, what are we going to do about this? Because when you owe the bank $1,000, it's your problem. When the bank is short $10 billion, it's the bank's problem. Okay, and when they need to get that $10 billion, and they can, and people can only pay it on 500 million. Well, I got to do, okay, fine. So let's get everything down to $500 million, and all of a sudden now the dollars that you make go farther. Now we don't have to spend as now my savings that's sitting in my bank account, my couch money now will buy groceries as opposed to being hyperinflated away. That's what they're afraid of, and that's what they don't want to see because they live and die by inflation. This unfair system that everybody is raging about is about how the banks get the vig on printing money. They get the VIG between the price you borrow it at and they print it at, and they get the difference in the middle. And that system is fundamentally unfair, and it rolls the wealth all the way up to them while we all get fucked. That's the system that has to go away. And I got news for you, Garland. I hate to say this, but they're winning right now. The
Right.
EU is winning. China's winning. The freaking Soros and the rest of them are winning because they got us all fighting each other while they're bailing each other out. And now they're going to give us the Hobson's choice between we either accept Joe Biden as president to continue this thing going forward, or we tear the government down and we put Antifa in charge. Okay, that's our Hobson's choice that they put in front of us this morning. That's what you and I are discussing. That's in the 40,000-foot picture. And am I the only person who sees this? Like everybody in the quote unquote dissident media that in the circles that we travel in, no one is making this point. And I cannot believe that it's right there in front of you. They kind of get part of it, but you let it all deflate. I've been saying this for 3 months, and it would end, but they don't want to give it up, and they're going to fight, like you said, as a wounded dragon. They're going to fight tooth and nail to not give that up, and we have to stay the course and not get angry and just wait for them to finally come to us and go, okay, I'm going to let's cut your mortgage by 70%. Can you pay 30%? Can you pay 40% off? How about 70%? I can't do 70. How about 50? Let's go for 65. All right. You drive a hard bargain, sir. Sign on the dotted line. Let's move on. And next, and do it and process millions of these damn things.
Well, the other thing is you bring up something that makes me you're just saying things that spark a new thought. And
Right.
this is what I thought. I was a cop, right? It's a blue collar job.
Yeah, it is.
It's a blue collar job. A cop's a blue collar job. I got promoted, up pretty high as a major, and I made a good salary. I wasn't rich, but I made a very nice salary for a blue collar person. But over and all, your average cop is a working person. Okay.
Yep.
They get up and go out in the cold or the heat, and they make an honest living. So when they look out and they see millennials, whoever, running around like crazy and cops running around like crazy, you know what they see? A bunch of working stiffs beating the crap out of each other. That ain't really bothering them. Burning our own stuff down, and I mean middle class people, small business, big business. Here's the other thing. I heard someone, like, I was listening, they were like, well, now they're burning down their important stores, and they're in Beverly Hills, and they're burning their stores down, and their bricks and mortar. They'll be upset. No, they won't. They don't give a crap about those stores.
No,
And
they
here's
don't.
what tells me that. There is no real world economy right now.
Mm-mm.
And the stock market is still up. The stock market's high. Why? Because as long as the stock market is up, the 85% or 84% of people in America, the 84 or 85% of it is owned by the top 1%, they're okay. The reason they're keeping the stock market high falsely, as though there's a real economy when there isn't one, is so they won't lose their money. So the government's like, look, there ain't no tourism. You're invested in oil, no oil selling. You're invested in tourism, there's no tourism happening. However, we'll just keep pumping money into the market. The market will stay up. Don't worry, you won't lose a dime. So if their stores if they've got money invested in Benetton, in whatever, and all of these stores are on Rodeo Drive burned down, what do they care? Because the truth of the matter is the government will just pump more money into this fake stock market. If you're making money off of whatever business it is, Benetton or whatever business that they have stores out there and they sell these
Macy's
goods. They don't care if they sell them or not. If they're not selling them, the government will pump money in to keep the stock market up. Your investments will be fine. Your investments are not related to sales. They're not related to the health of the companies you're invested in. They're not related to the bricks and mortar anymore. So what do you give a crap if they burn the bricks and mortar? If they tear it all down, the government will keep the market high and you will not lose a dime. In fact, the government will make the market go up. You'll make more money. They are no longer related to us financially. The money is a fraud. The market is a fraud. Well, it's not a fraud per se.
No, it is.
It is a casino that they use, but all of the games in the casino are fixed.
Yep.
So what do they care? If they can sit in their ivory towers, they can get in their big 80, 250-foot yachts, sit offshore, and they can watch us like a bunch of idiots beat the living daylights out of each other and kill each other and rob each other. Because we're all working class people. We don't matter. You know what? Few less hungry mouths to feed, all the better for them.
Ready? I said this the other day. It didn't make it onto Twitter, but I should have put it on Twitter. Ready? So Trump tweets out that Macy's, the flagship Macy's store in Manhattan, got looted the other night. And I'm thinking to myself, well, Macy's is going out of business anyway. I'm sure that the board is actually happier about the store getting looted because now they can put in the insurance claim against the stores, and they'll probably get more for that than they would in bankruptcy court for the assets that were in the store. That's reality, dude. Like,
Well, look,
there's
here's
a
the other
certain
part of
level,
it.
like retail, bricks and mortar retail in the United States is dead. Okay,
This is saving them. They
yeah.
know they know that they know that everything's going online anyway. They know that these malls are closing. They know. So you know what they can do? They can get insurance money. They can get more government bailouts. It just saves them. They knew inevitably that a lot of these businesses were going to shut down and drop the bloody hell anyway.
That's right.
That it was over for a lot of them. This gives them just like they do everything. They create complicated financial tools to make money. This just gives them a way to get out from under the eventual destruction of the bricks and mortar business in a way that they can get the money quick and walk away.
It's very, very dangerous what's happening here. It's very, very ugly, and I'm just it's blood boiling, right? And it makes me and so much of this, I'm not even sure what else I have to say at this point, to be honest with you. Yeah. I don't. Yeah, no, dude, I got nothing left. I'm done.
Yeah, same here. But I think
I'm done. Like that was it. I'm done.
And
we're at the hour mark. We might as well stop.
Better after this conversation. I feel more informed, but I sure as hell don't feel better.
No, it is. It's a terrible state of mind to be in. But all I can tell you is this, and I tell everybody that's listening is this. What I said earlier, I think, is the clearest thing. And I've been telling people for weeks now, like on my live streams, I'm like, don't donate to the stream. I don't need the money. My business is good. I'm in the doom porn business. Like, this is the best this is the best time to be in the business that I'm doing. Like, the media is failing everybody, all of this. Like, don't donate to my stream. There are people out there who've lost their jobs. Your local food banks need help. Donate your time, donate your money, donate whatever. I don't care. Do that. I'm making enough money that I can continue to do my part. Like, this is the best I can do, right? I don't need it. And that's just the way I've been now for weeks on end. And I fundamentally feel the exact same way today, even more than yesterday. And if my schedule wasn't so tight, I would be giving out more of my time. But all I can do is continue to chronicle the destruction of our country and our civilization, and say, can we not do that, please? Can we not do that? And let's remind ourselves who the real enemy is. Let's go back to the Hunger Games. Don't forget who the real enemy is here. Meet the new boss, same as the old boss. They're right in front of you.
And like you said, don't look for the people who created this problem to fix it.
Oh, politics got us into this mess, and it certainly is not going to get us out of it.
Well, thanks a lot, Tom. I certainly appreciate you taking out your time. You got a busy schedule and you're doing a lot of things. I certainly appreciate you taking out your time to contact me and to set this podcast up and to give me an opportunity to make a few comments.
Oh, you did great, Garland, and I'm so thoroughly happy to have reconnected with you, man. I actually missed talking to you for the last 4 or 5 weeks. So, yeah, no, the pleasure's all mine, and the thanks is all on my end. So you have a great day. You take care now, and we'll talk again soon, man.
All right. Thanks a lot, Tom. You too.
Be well. Well, I hope this helped get some form of clarity or wrap your head around what's happening in the situation, or just helped you to process some of this in a way that makes some sense. This is the end of the special edition of the Gold Goats and Guns podcast. I appreciate everybody checking in. And as always, if you want, you can follow me on Twitter at TFL1728. You can follow my blog over tomluongo.me. You can donate, not to this channel, or to this podcast, but to your local charities, your local food banks, your local churches. There are a lot of people out there who are hurting, and they need someone to show them some humanity, because I feel very strongly about this. This is the time when we have to come together as local communities, because politics has failed us, and politics isn't going to get us out of it. All right, you guys be well. We'll be back on Tuesday with someone else, or not. We'll see. There'll be another episode. Episode 38 is incoming at some point between now and Tuesday. You guys take care. You be well. We'll talk soon. Keep your stick on the ice.